The bends. Divers in the Navy get it. Decompression sickness, and it can be deadly. Still, more animals intentionally die from the bends when the Navy, in an attempt to understand the disease, performs cruel and useless tests. It's got to stop. A young animal rights activist who left the PhD program to join PETA talks about the fight against the Navy's animal experiments. Next, on the PETA Podcast. Welcome to the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo, your host for this inside look at animal rights. Brought to you by PETA, the largest animal rights organization in the world. On today's episode, the Navy has been conducting cruel animal tests using sheep to study the bends at Navy medical centers from coast to coast. The bends, BENDS, also known as decompression sickness, occurs when divers go from pressurized underwater environments to the top too quickly. Nitrogen gas bubbles form in the blood, muscles, joints, causing a debilitating illness. The Navy could study actual people with the bends, but they've taken to these sheep tests that aren't human relevant and end up wasting your tax dollars, but most important, wasting animal lives. Shriya Swaminathan is a PETA Science Policy Advisor who left her PhD program at a prestigious university to be a full-time animal rights activist. She talked to me about the Navy's decompression test and how fighting against it has reinforced her career choice to save the animals. On the PETA Podcast.
The United States Navy is using animals in many horrific tests in order to study what is called bends, also called decompression sickness and decompression illness. And what bends is it's the accumulation of nitrogen gas in the blood, other organs, including the brain. And this can cause excruciating pain.
All right, so now you called it the bends.
Yes.
Now, I guess I heard about it in passing over the years, but I'm not a swimmer or deep sea diver. Talk about the scientific thing. You are going deep underwater, and then you quickly want to elevate, get up to the surface. That speed, the process by which you go from down below to the surface, if you go too fast, it's deadly.
So, it has to do with the pressure difference, because when you are in those deep sea levels, it is a higher pressure when compared to the pressure you're exposed to when you're at sea level or above sea level. So that pressure difference is what is causing this nitrogen gas formation, and this can cause just crippling joint pains. It can even lead to death in some circumstances. And here, the United States Navy is willfully subjecting sheep and other animals to this excruciating condition. They are forcibly induced with these joint pains, bloating, and this bloating is treated by puncturing their stomachs. They are induced with cardiovascular collapse and spinal cord injury. And these would often leave animals paralyzed and frequently dead. These experiments entail trapping them in these high pressure chambers, injecting them with experimental substances, after which they are killed and dissected. They implant different devices into rats' brains and bodies. They expose them to very high pressures until they seize. They expose parts of their brains to very high oxygen concentrations and pressures. And then after they experiment on them, they decapitate them. Right. So none of the animals here are making it out alive. Even those who miraculously survive all of these gruesome procedures are still ultimately killed.
How long have these tests been going on, and how many animals have been involved, do you think?
So as far as the number of animals, we do have pending records requests from the United States Navy that should give us a clearer idea on the number of animals and further information that would, as far as funding and all this important information that the public deserves to know. PETA had actually previously put an end to these archaic experiments that were being funded and supported by the Navy back in 2010. And this came from complaints both from PETA and other animal advocacy groups regarding these decompression experiments being conducted on sheep at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And it appears that since then, these experiments have resumed, and we are leading the charge to put an end to these archaic tests that also don't translate effectively to humans.
All right. Now, any reason why they were picked up again? If they'd been stopped in 2010, you say?
When they were first stopped, it was actually legally an act of animal cruelty to kill animals through decompression. And since then, it looks like there has now been a legal loophole that's been created that would exempt research facilities from abiding by that specific regulation. And that's my understanding of it.
Now, since any of these tests, anything come out of it to help the Navy figure out why the bends? Well, they know why the bends occurs, but did anything come out of it to help deal with the bends?
Long story short, no, because the treatment for bends hasn't changed for over 80 years. And the United States Navy is still supporting and funding and conducting these archaic experiments, expecting a different result. And the Naval Medical Research Center themselves have acknowledged that these experiments on animals do not accurately translate to humans. We have human-based studies on human-derived cells. We have data that's been obtained from human divers. So when we have these more human-relevant studies that would likely provide information to help us better assess what's going to be more effective to our naval members and produce treatments that are more likely going to be of relevance to them, there's really no justifiable reason to continue subjecting animals to this needless torture, especially here when it's happening at our taxpayer dollars and not producing the effective treatments that our naval members deserve.
So if it sounds like they're having these parallel experiments, the non-animal tests, or more human relevant tests, and if they're going to come up with any kind of answer to the bends, it may be from that and not from these animal tests, it sounds like.
Unless these sheep, mice, and rats are serving in our Navy, these experiments really don't have any relevance to the humans who are serving in the Navy. We want what's best for the people who are in the service, and it's important that they get the treatments that they deserve, that they are using the best possible science. And the scientific community has clearly shown, the data is out there, that using animals is not the best possible science to obtain information that is going to be beneficial for human health. We're not making an unreasonable ask here. Our allied navies, who are also very successful navies like the France and the United Kingdom, they're already ahead of the curve. They have scrapped their respective animal testing programs in favor of these advanced, more human relevant methods to study decompression sickness. So it's not like this cannot be done, because the success of the Navy does not rely on having to use, exploit, and kill animals.
So let's talk about the tests again. You have these sheep, and we still don't know exactly the numbers of sheep, but they have sheep. They come in, they're locked in high pressure chambers, and they've got these tests going on at Walter Reed in Bethesda, They have it at the Navy Medical Center in San Diego. They have it going on at the Naval Medical Research Center in Silver Spring. So this is happening all over the country, according to this 2021 report that's published by the Undersea and Hyperbaric Medical Journal. Okay, so they're exposed to apparently to pressure to what a diver would experience at 257 feet below sea level. And they're left at that state for 31 minutes and then forced to decompress. And then, of course, they're going to get sick.
Yeah.
The sheep.
Yeah, it's like I said, just the crippling joint pain, the bloating, which they puncture to relieve the bloating, the spinal cord injury, the cardiovascular collapse, and the paralysis. These are just excruciating symptoms of decompression illness. But the fact remains unchanged that using animals like sheep and mice and rats is not the best way to deliver the information we need for humans who are going to experience decompression illness. And in fact, it's not only PETA who is making this ask. We were joined by the former commander of the Naval Medical Research Center in Portsmouth. Her name is Rear Admiral Marian Balsam. And she had joined PETA in calling on the current Secretary of the Navy, Carlos Del Toro, and in writing to him and urging him to do the right thing and put an end to these archaic and wasteful animal experiments for decompression sickness. When the Naval Medical Research Center themselves are acknowledging that decompression sickness in sheep and other animals can manifest differently from how it does in humans, really, it seems to defy all logic that they would continue to torture and kill sheep and get data that they are also going to claim is not going to translate accurately to humans. So it's a waste of our money, it's a waste of their lives, and it's also fueling that sense of false hope that we have around the paradigm of animal experiments by just creating that misplaced expectation and trust in that this is somehow miraculously going to give us the cure-all that we need.
Now, PETA started this campaign or restarted the campaign in September. You sent the letter to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. Did he respond? What was his answer?
We actually wrote to the Secretary of the Navy before that, back in June. We wrote to Carlos Del Toro, which was also very graciously supported by the former commander of the Naval Medical Research Center, Marian Balsam. We have, and as you mentioned, also written to the Secretary of Defense. Now, we haven't gotten a response that indicates that any proactive measures are going to be taken, but PETA is continuing to keep the pressure on. We are showing up at events where Secretary of the Navy Del Toro is speaking. We've made our presence known, our voices heard loud and clear on behalf of the animals. We will do whatever it takes to make sure that the Navy does the right thing, keeps up with the technological advancements of our time, and also uses as an opportunity to set a positive precedent to other navies that still might be using animals in these archaic experiments, because we can have that positive influence to show other nations, just like France and Britain are already doing by scraping their own respective animal testing programs for decompression sickness. The United States can very well do the same thing and set a positive precedent, be a champion for scientific advancements and ethical, human-based, cruelty-free research. And not only that, PETA has made it so easy for members of the public to get involved and take quick and simple action too. So folks can go to PETA.org/Navy, and just very simple steps, and a click of a button, you will be able to send a letter to the top military brass, urging them to do away with these archaic animal experiments once and for all and do the right thing, embrace animal-free methods for these decompression experiments. So that's PETA.org/Navy to make your voices heard on behalf of these animals.
Now, you're saying this for the general public, but you were a PhD candidate studying to be a scientist. And tell me what it's been like personally for you to be in this campaign, calling for an end to this decompression sickness testing on sheep at the Navy. What has it been like for you to be, a former PhD science track person who gives that up and goes into full-time activism?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, because this is something that is very, one of the biggest and most important and most fulfilling decisions I've ever made in my life, and which I will never regret. It feels very empowering. It feels like my actions are aligned with my purpose, what I feel is my purpose. As a former PhD candidate, I was confronting the cognitive dissonance of my peers, the system that I really wanted to change of how animals are viewed within the research paradigm. I was just very often exposed to that comment that, we take care of our animals well. And I try not to name the animals because I don't want to bond with them. And then when, we have to kill them for whatever experimental purpose, I've just witnessed so many of these barriers that people would put up so they wouldn't form those connections with animals. To me, I entered that scientific space because I wanted to work on developing these human-based, animal-free methods that I've been talking about in this particular case. I wanted to work on developing these models that could be used for a variety of different diseases, and just seeing how the system was and seeing it very geared towards what's going to get the most publications, what's going to get the next grant coming in, what's going to get me to graduate more students so I have a good track record as a faculty member or as a mentor, which I understand are important things for their personal careers. But I found myself very often losing sight of the big picture, which was to help the animals. It would get really bogged down to how do I get this one experiment to work, rather than how is this going to help save the lives of countless animals. And so I think making that switch for me is actually putting that passion for science, but desire to help animals into actual practice in my everyday life. And I know that these alternatives to using animals exist. I know that these better methods need to be championed. They need to be further developed, because it is the right thing to do for all of the people who are expecting a reliable treatment. And of course, for all the animals who are needlessly being killed. So for me, it feels like I am finally aligned with my goals. And I'm also very, very honored to work alongside many other scientists there and many other experts in this space who, are also animal rights activists, but are still very much scientists. They don't have to be mutually exclusive things. And I think I'm seeing how we're able to get that messaging across, that being against animal experimentation is not being against science. It's being against bad and effective science, but it's very much human-based, effective science that's actually going to help people. And I think it's an honor to be working alongside these scientists and experts and a team who have their eyes on that goal. And I just feel very supported and uplifted and empowered to be able to work with them every day.
So when you left your PhD track, if you had stayed, you would have had a PhD.
Sure.
Here, you might get an atta girl. Good job. I know, but no regrets having left that side of your life where you spent so much time working in science. And now you're a full-time activist. No regrets.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I did get a master's degree out of it, so it's not like, I didn't get anything, but I can't help but wonder if I just okay, let me just get through it. There is a pretty high chance that I wouldn't have really gone into activism and advocacy in the capacity that I felt called to. I think I would have still been on, trying to tone down the way that I showed up in different spaces. But I feel that leaving that and being among a group of scientists and activists, again, they're just one complete powerful package, that I found the courage and the self-confidence to not have to tone down that the animal rights side, but also learn how to get the message across that this is still a very much a pro-science stance, that we are still 100% for scientific advancements, but we're advocating for the better way to go about it, which is to not use and kill animals.
Did you find that there are more people like you in that track when you were going for your PhD, or more and more people like you, or did you find that there was so few people like you and more of the conformists that this is the way we always do science, that you just had to leave and essentially cross the line and come into the activist scientific world?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that it was kind of a balance. Some people, I don't know if they just said that because they were talking to me, be like, oh, I don't want to, I don't like that I have to work on animals. But I try to care for them as well as I can. And the usual reasons that people can give. But I did meet quite a few people who, said that they very, very specifically they were very clear saying that they didn't want to work on animals. Some who said that, they didn't want to ever get used to killing animals for experiments. So I did. And so meeting people like that definitely gave me hope. But I wouldn't say that it was that I ever felt that pressure to conform, and that could just be, I just happened to be in a place where people were accepting of my views, maybe accepting that, well, that's also the right outlook to have, to, not use, exploit, or kill another being against their will for whatever reason. But I never felt like I had to hide that necessarily. But I think what really got to me was just losing sight of that big picture, losing sight of what I was doing was going to help the animals. Just seemed the helping animals piece was going to come very much later, maybe not in my lifetime. So let's just say I got impatient. It's like, no, I want to start helping animals now. And this was worth it. Absolutely worth it.
All right.
Because I know that what I'm doing is, I can see the effects. They feel a lot more tangible to me than they did a few years ago.
All right. One last question. I know your parents are from India.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're a daughter of immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in your 20s, I gather, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so the big question, being a South Asian American,
Mm-hmm.
what do your parents think?
I know. They're like, not a doctor, not an engineer, not a lawyer. They were actually pretty supportive. I think, every now and then they have the like, oh, if you got that PhD, but they hear me on a podcast like this, or see that, the work that I'm doing have tangible effects on animals' lives. Like, they do feel happy and proud of that. So yeah, I guess, they're just their parents, they're supportive, but every now and then there's like, oh, but you left that education. But it's like, well, to me, it doesn't feel like it was a waste of my time. So I think I just feel very safe and secure and assured in my decision that I like other external doubts they don't affect me. I think I'm just very confident in this choice that I've made.
Shriya Swaminathan is a science policy advisor for international lab methods at PETA. She left a PhD science track at a major university to be an animal rights activist. And now she's fighting the Navy and its use of sheep decompression tests. For more, go to PETA.org/Navy. And that's our show for today. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to send a link of this show to your friends. Tell them you liked the PETA podcast. You can contact us at PETA.org. You can find me on Twitter at Emil Amok, that's EMILAMOK, or see my vlog at amok.com, or see my work at ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. That's at ALDEF, AALDEF.org/blog. Once again, thank you for listening. Check out all our episodes on your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts, where you can subscribe to as well as rate and review the show. It helps get the word out about the issues you care about. Our music is provided by Carbon Works. Check them out on YouTube. And join us again next time for more insight into animal rights and the fight for a cruelty-free world on the PETA Podcast. I'm Emil Guillermo.